Hello and welcome to the Space Between Ideas. I'm Blank Gates. Are we filming? Good. All right. So it looks like everything's starting to move. Looks like the meeting notes are off. All right. Now, the thing about me is that you're going to find out very, very quickly if you're new to my channel is that I'm very emotional. If we think about the big five personality traits, specifically neuroticism, I mean, this is going over the heads of too many people. All right. So let's see what we can do. Let's see how consistent we can be. I remember one of my playlists, I was able to do like a 100-day challenge, one video every day for 100 days. Let's start with just this one little quote here. So the quote is, what types of prompts will help people work with you? What types of prompts that will help people work with you will be used most frequently by the largest customer segment of people that need help creating prompts? It's like the key to the universe is the question, right? Ask and ye shall receive. You know how long I've been waiting for ask and ye shall receive to show up? So, all right, so the largest customer segments of people that need help creating prompts, content generation, problem solving, personal development, learning and education, creativity, brainstorming, decision making, language practice, time management and productivity, emotional well-being, trivia and entertainment. All right, so like where are we with that? I don't know. And okay, which one of these market segments are going to have the most money for help creating prompts? So we got business and organizations, education, e-learning platforms, professional services, creative industries. You know, you can just keep digging and digging and digging and digging. And then where are you going to sell these, right? So can I create an automated process similar to Google Forms in a digital file that can be uploaded and sold on Gumroad? Like, as long as you understand the platforms and the opportunities in the marketplace, then it's not too terrible to be able to do anything these days. Now, what I want to do before we go more deeply into like creating prompts for developing websites, I want to go back into history because as you found out from the first video in this playlist, this has been a 9-year process, which means what? So over the last 9 years, I failed quite a few times. And from having a chat with some of the people that I work with, apparently there are people who have been successful creating websites with ChatGPT. And they're probably, but it's not, it's like, are they actually showing you the like the 100,000 prompts that they created and the process of creating all those prompts? And then what percentage of people who are actually trying to create websites eventually quit? How many are successful? I don't know. Am I going to be successful? Well, I made a really simple website. I was able to do it. So it seems to suggest I could probably do it again. I don't know. Anyways, let's go back into history. So as Tom and I started talking very early about how to create some kind of business, he really tried to help me to understand what does it mean to be like to create these types of options. Like, how do you create a website? So he started by talking about the two fundamental relationships. So we have our us, so the company and customers, and then we've got customers plus users. So he gave me a very clear picture, like, okay, so we need to enroll a customer. The customer specifies a profile. The user edits the profile. The user changes password. The customer subscribes to a level of service, collecting fees, issuing refunds, issue summaries of charges and expenses, warn customers about changes in fees, suspend services, merge customers, split a customer into a few customers, handle messages from customers, edit, delete customers' users' work, educate a customer regarding features and philosophies. All right. But it goes beyond that. So then, okay, info needed to be maintained. I don't know if we're going to run out of our time. It might crash at 5 minutes. Huh. I don't know what's wrong with Loom. There is a possibility that Loom is now, maybe they have some competitors. So the thing about like, if Loom suddenly has a competitor and the competitor is offering like unlimited amount of time and then they're charging for other services and then Loom, they're losing customers. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. All right, so we have info that needs to be maintained, list of customers, past and present, profile for each customer, service plans and fees, history charging fees. It just goes on and on. Cross-cutting legal issues, extend and maintain history, extend to maintain history data, extend to support data rollbacks, roles regarding what users do, administration and policies, access to see versus access to modify, teams within and across. So this is within the company. So maybe they have. So now the original idea that, see, what we want to create here is some kind of like ecosystem. And so the idea was that a company or a team or a project would be able to I mean, in some respect, you could say, I think an easy way to think about it would be, let's say I'm a coach and I'm using Tom's checklists. And then, okay, so now I want to have my own platform where I can help people to go through these checklists. And that means I need to, so I'm a customer and then I'm working with other users. So that's the customers and users, where this is the us and the customer. So, and I remember very, very clearly having discussions about like, how does this work? How do we do this? What is it? What all these things mean? And I just couldn't understand anything. So I decided like, okay, if this is an MVP, I need to start figuring out how to do this code. And it was just a challenge. I heard about Bubble. So what I did on Bubble originally was, I bought, so here's a Kanban task board like Trello, matching, dating, so that's like Tinder. We got Slackly for team messaging. We got some setup landing page. We got some project management. So there's all these different types of boards, and this was going to help me to understand how to use this this interface. But it didn't work. So what actually happened was, well, so it is true. So what I did was I started using these templates, and then as you can see from here, I tried to structure some of this information. So now let's go. So this is the workflow that Tom was expressing. And so then I started to go into, okay, so here's that. Wait, let's go to the first one. So if we go to the task boards, I'm talking about the task boards from here. So the task boards like Trello. So I went in there and I started to design like, okay, so what's happening? So on this page, what's the information needed? Okay, then there's a board, and then there's a list, then there's a task, then there's attachments, and then, okay, when a user logs in, like then there's the navigation. And I started to try to put together, like, I needed to try to visualize what's happening in these apps. Honestly, at this time, I had no idea what I was looking at. I was just like writing words. It's like when you first learn a language and you just make noises and you don't really know how the noises fit together. You start to piece them together, but you don't really understand it. So, like, this reminds me of a long time ago. After I left California, I went back to Canada, and I speak Chinese. I've worked for 2 international law firms in Shanghai. I have an undergraduate degree in Chinese law. I got back to Canada, and I was just like, this is when I got divorced, and the lady that I had married, she decided she wanted to go back to China, and I knew that I didn't have a career in China anymore, so we decided to part ways. Get back to Canada, and I don't want to work with Chinese companies. I didn't want to do anything with Chinese at all. But the problem was I wasn't educated in Canada. I went to Mount Royal for a couple of years, back when it was Mount Royal College, not Mount Royal University in Calgary. I was like super, super down and super depressed. Like I was so burnt out from living in China for 10 years and all of the different things that had happened to me in my religion. My religion, they had kicked me out. I'd made too many mistakes and I was like officially kicked out of my church. But I mean, they're like, you still have to you have to keep coming back. It was intense, and then I got divorced, and then I was like burned out, and I met Tom at like the weakest part of my existence, really. And so I'm in Canada, and I start driving a school bus. So I got this little mini school bus. They I'm a big guy, pretty patient, and decided to put me. Actually, I was driving for the school that I went to when I was a kid. I used to go to Renfrew Elementary, and actually I designed the logo when it used to be. They had a competition, and I had like there was like this raccoon, and he had his like thumb up like this, and they used it. I mean, obviously they had to brush up on some of the art, but the concept, they liked the concept. So I'm driving these, but now it's a school for kids that have problems and they have behavioral problems. So I'm driving these kids. There's 8, 9, 10 of these kids. There's like a driving assistant, and I used to listen to books. So I drove for 2 years. 2 years I listened to, I don't know, between 60 and 80 books, audiobooks, and I used to read Tom's book all the time. Just sit and read it and try to figure it out. And one time I called him, or maybe I sent him a message. No, first this one must have been a call, and I was just like, hey, there's this one point, I finally got it. Like it was so difficult to understand, but I think I finally got it. It's like this, like there's just so much information. Like this is the other one, team messaging app, and like how does it work, and then what does the infrastructure look like inside a Bubble, and then then projects landing, and then put it all together in some kind of direct outcomes checklist app. It was crazy. So I told him like, I understand this one little point, and he says to me, he says, remember the way you feel right now, and because when other people, as you start to work with people, it might take them just as long. It might take them even longer. It may be even more difficult for them to understand. And I was like, oh boy. So that's the thing, is like when you have a huge amount of like, I don't know how any of this works. Now, from there, I think the useful thing about Bubble, something that was really useful, is this idea of like, what does it mean to have, these three areas. So we have a design area, and then we have this workflow area, and then we have this data area. Now, as you can see from the workflow area and data area, or maybe you can't. So the design area, this is called a user interface. Now, this specific user interface, it's not real. So here I've kind of mapped out like, all right, so in this particular website, we have like these choices at the top of the screen. And then, all right, so here, for example, here, this website, we can search for a tutor or maybe a coach. We can send messages. We can go to the home screen. We can book a lesson, or we have a profile. And then we have choices, all right? So we can make different choices. So here's more about the filters. But at this point, I've already been working on a website that's very similar to this for many, many, many years as a student and as a teacher. So I understand the infrastructure of this website. If we go back to, so I used this, I was using this, like I can use this. I'm able to use this Bubble as like a way to design. I can design. And then Because look, we can add, for example, if we go to this page, so I can add a button. I just click the button, I add the button, and then, okay, start and edit a workflow. So the workflow, it means like what happens when I click the button. Now, obviously we can do navigation. So when I click the button, it's going to go to a different page. But the more difficult thing is when you start working with data. So obviously the data, it's connecting to this Excel spreadsheet. Now I'm going to am I creating a new thing? Am I making changes to a thing? So suddenly it gets really complicated because I'm designing stuff. That's easy. I can see it. That's what the website actually looks like. But then when I click a button, then what happens? And so you have to go into this data section and start to structure the data. What happened was finally I was communicating with Zero Code a lot because they have these courses. And so I would select courses that I wanted to learn. And I kept having problems. Like I would get to a certain point and then like maybe the person who was teaching it, there was some assumption that they had or some setting or some issue. And they didn't realize that like for other people, it might not work. So there's troubleshooting issues. And I wasn't really in the mood to contact people because I still wasn't even like, I wasn't sure what the MVP was going to look like. So that was like my experience really with Bubble was it gave me this understanding that we have things called design and then like the user interface. And then as we click the buttons in the design, then we need to have some kind of workflow. And some of that workflow, it's going to be creating different things. Like obviously, so if I, for example, if I click this heart, then it turns red. Now for me, I actually have two images side by side. And so this is a navigation. When I click this heart, it navigates to the other page. That's not actually what's supposed to happen. And then like, let's say we want to learn from Awesome, Cool, Sexy Tutor. So when we click on this, it's just a navigation. It's not actually doing a workflow. It's not creating anything. And so that's the issue is like, the workflow is just so difficult to learn for me. And it's always been difficult for me. And I'm just not like, my math brain is like itty bitty. And then my ability to structure and understand code is just like so small. But I can speak Chinese and I can speak Russian. And now I'm starting to learn French. It's like, okay, but because I'm communicating with people directly and people who I want to communicate with. But there's nobody in this community so far where like, I like these people. Or I want to communicate with these people, or this is something that's interesting to me. And so it's just been such a challenge. And I feel like at least I learned the difference between a design, a workflow, and data. So I would suggest anyone who is starting to learn, like if you want to use ChatGPT in order to design a website, then I think you have to understand like at least that there's a user interface. You're going to be creating workflows and it's going to be working with data. Because, I mean, if you don't have that, then like, where would you start? Like, I don't even know, really. Oh, I thought I had more. So we talked about ChatGPT. What's this? We talked about, now, the thing is that over the years, I've created other iterations. So the first MVP that I started to create a new concept, all right, direct outcomes checklists, 6 questions for highly effective businesses. So for example, have you thought through all the steps of progress from the beginning of the project to the end and beyond? What do you think about the time you spent thinking through various options and your ability to articulate value created by chosen? Like it's too wordy, right? And it's like so many questions, and I'm trying to take his entire book, and then from that, then it goes into like the next page where it's going to explain something, and then from there, it's like, all right, so we start with insight. Either we can shape potential, form agendas. So this is directly from Tom's book, and then these are his direct outcomes checklists, and then I recreate his checklists here. And this was actually closer to his original vision, I think. Because what he wants is like the ability for people to enter some kind of task or endeavor and then talk specifically about instances, right? So let's say that we want to, all right, so 10 questions that can help you figure out how to do better by giving you themes that tell you what to do next. State synergies. Question 5. How would you characterize the level of coordination in your projects, teams, and organizations? All right, so record your thoughts here. And so this user experience and the way I'm structuring information, I always felt like there was just a lack of facilitation and that it would require a high amount of facilitation. It's not natural. And there's just some challenges when it's used in the real world. So like, because I work with people directly. And so I like the formulas, I like the concepts, but as I started to work with people, I found that I needed to optimize some of these for facilitating efforts with people. Now, I don't know if I have any other iterations here. Endeavor action. Yeah, so over the years I've just kind of drew out a couple of different ideas. I got Chinese currency manipulation here for some reason. Anyways, yeah, so I just wanted today to talk about like that I had a hard time at the beginning. I failed a lot. And it was just really, really, really challenging. And so and I only learned like, especially at the beginning, it was just like one little teeny tiny incy wincy little bit at a time. I was really frustrated because I couldn't believe how dumb I was. It reminds me of this experience when I started learning Chinese. So I used to sit in the cafeteria in Changchun. Changchun? I used to live in Changchun, China, up in northeast China. I'd sit in the cafeteria for like hours and hours and hours a day just writing Chinese characters by hand. I remember one time I had a video camera. So I had this 2 megapixel Canon digital camera in 2003. And I remember just like videotaping myself and saying like, okay, I'm going to learn Chinese characters. And then after 6 hours, I was like, okay, I've learned 36 characters today. 6 hours. That's what, 10 characters an hour? That's, no, 36, what, 6? And then what, 6 times 6, 36. So that's 1 character every 10 minutes. And then I was like, I must be retarded. So that's a direct quote from 2003. And it's true. Like when you're trying to learn something new, it can be such a challenge. And I feel for people like, no, I don't really feel for people. Because I've lost that. Even though Tom, at the very beginning, that was like basically the first lesson was that it takes time for people to learn and you have to be able to be patient for that. And like, it's just so difficult. Because once your car starts to speed up and then someone's like, hey, can you stop for me? And it's like, you're already past them. And I'm starting to get this feeling in other areas of my life. So there's some certain issues, some situations where there are some of the people that I'm working with as a coach, and I'm finding like that their IQ level is not as high as high as maybe I'd like, or they're talking about things that doesn't make any sense to me, and then suddenly I just feel like these people aren't very smart, and then emotions start to come up. So this is a really interesting field, like, being a human and living and trying to work through these issues. And if you are hoping to design a website in 10 minutes on ChatGPT, it's probably not going to be the case. But I believe it's entirely possible. And that's why I wanted to kind of share some of my failures to say that, hey, guess what? Like the guy that you see me, like, because over the next weeks, you're going to see that I'm really smart, like beyond your expectations smart. And the reason that I'm smart is because I've just talked to so many people and they've helped me to understand so many things. So I don't know, be patient. it's okay to feel frustrated and to not know what you're doing. And but like, what else are you gonna do? Like, you can give up and then go back to McDonald's, or you can just be patient and treat it like a hobby. Learn one little bit every day, and things will get better. So, the last thing I wanted to say was just this concept of what is an MVP? Because as you can see from the screen, like it's way too many factors. There's too many concepts. And how are you ever going to get ChatGPT to be able to do all of these things? No, it's not possible. It's not possible yet for me. Maybe it's possible for you. But for me right now, no, this is not possible. But I do believe that this is possible. I do believe that this is possible. And so let's take a moment to relax. You made it through 26 minutes. Congratulations. I hope you're feeling emotional and that, yeah, this is a really difficult thing, and that, yeah, you failed and you've had mistakes, and you don't ever believe that you'll be able to code, and that maybe you're not smart enough, maybe you're not pretty enough, maybe you're not strong enough, maybe you're not. It's okay. It's okay. I think we'll get there. Just keep watching.